All right, the last staff, we're going to talk about Angora goats, a charming small ruminant. Dr. Judah Shoemaker, Nottingham, Pennsylvania. They're going to talk about Angora goats. She's an internationally recognized integrative veterinarian medicine practitioner and educator. Her passions are being a good steward of her Fincastle farm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and caring for Angora goats that she shares with her partner, Glenn Kaufman. She incorporates innovations in medicine, husbandry, and therapy for special needs. Members of the tribe ensures quality of life for their elderly goats. Co-author Glenn Kaufman is a 10th generation crop and livestock farmer in Perry County, Pennsylvania, and former director of farm operations and services of the College of Agriculture of Penn State University. Together they own Pure American Naturals, a business dedicated to producing superior quality mohair products and educating consumers about the ecological value of Angora goats and luxurious fiber they produce. Glenn is he's a certified crop advisor with the American Society of Agronomy. Currently, he's a member of the board of directors of the Pennsylvania Grazing Lands Coalition, a board member of the Perry County Farm Bureau, and current president of the Mid-Atlantic Farmers Association. Glenn has presented at previous national GLCI coalitions and the Northeast Pasture Consortium Conference. Co-author Judith, veterinarian, is an integrative veterinarian practitioner in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with 80 heads of Angora goats on her farm. She's licensed in 11 states and teaches veterinary continuing education programs internationally. And here comes the man.
There we go. Well, that's wonderful.
You gotta stay within the box.
I'll stay within the box. That's great. And can we turn a little light down?
No, you can't turn the light down either.
Oh,
You're on video, so.
Oh. Okay, I'm ready.
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, terrific. Hi, thank you all so much for being here. I'll pass this around as well. That's the way it comes off the goat, and that's what it turns into. So these are my absolute loves. These guys are beautiful, very productive, and as many people don't realize, very ecologically valuable. They do things, is that the pointer? Yeah. They do things like this all the time, you know, they create art. You know, it's hard to take a bad picture of them. And they are good for this, they are very, very beautiful. We have a wonderful time with them. They're incredibly, as you can see, productive. Those are dolings. They're coming into their second clip. And they have 6 inches of mohair on them. They grow an inch of hair a month. So they're shorn twice a year. And they're not just good for the soil because they don't do any real damage. They hate walking in mud. They're really wonderful. But they're really good for the soul. I will tell you, they are good for the soul. Whoops, wrong way. All right. So you can see how really beautiful these paddocks look. Now this is how some of our paddocks look. We've got a lot of diversity. But when we rotate, that diversity stays. When we are on my farm, I think that's my farm. No, maybe that's down on the bottom, but that's an area where they have eaten off all of the terminal growth plants. And they will leave grass. They will not eat grass if they can avoid it. They will eat forbs and brush and poison ivy and multiflora rose and Canada thistle and a whole bunch of other things that nobody else likes to eat. And so they really are, my pastures on my farm in southern Lancaster County, they look like a lawn, you know, a long lawn. You know, we do very good tall grass grazing, but it's a really lovely thing to not have to ever get out a mower. You know, it's very, very good. It's good for the soil. And I have some rather fragile land that's got a little bit too much slope to it, and actually didn't have enough goats for a while, and ended up trying to hay it and did a lot of damage to the soil structure. And so these guys are actually the best and highest use for my property. They also climb trees. I couldn't resist putting that picture in there. But anyhow, I was just talking with somebody outside who said that she'd had Angora goats and had a problem. She couldn't fence them. They were always in the guy next door's pastures. But ours absolutely don't do that. I've got one fence jumper, and that's it. And the rest of them stay in. But anyway, this is something that's really important about their grazing habit, is that they do a really good job, but then they move on. You can, whoops, excuse me. You can see that there is a line in the sward where they just will move out every day and show us exactly how far they've eaten, and they try not to revisit areas that are already grazed, because in being the longest domesticated fiber animal, they've kind of figured out how to manage themselves pretty well, because they are highly inbred for many, I mean, 10,000 years, longer than the alpaca. And so they are very sensitive to parasites, but they have learned to manage this quite nicely. But as you can see, we have our rotation. Whoa, come back here. We have our paddocks. You can see there are many different paddocks here. And they will just eat their way out to the end. We don't have to go out and get the pasture stick. You can see it where they're done, and they come home and they go to the next paddock. So they are really a very, very wonderful animal to manage. Glenn's not up here, but he could be. He could talk about how much easier these guys are than all the other types of livestock that he said. He's had everything except what? Turkeys, no turkeys, chickens, pigs, cows, everything else. But these are definitely the most economical and the easiest to work with. They are very gentle compared to dairy goats or meat goats. As I say, kids can handle them. We don't have a lot of goats in 4-H, or Angora goats in 4-H right now, but we should, because they are something that little bitties can work with. And they are pleasant. I mean, they are, when we were talking about the jumping and so on and so forth, I have one doe, her name is Jumper, who, heavily pregnant, like 2 days before she kids, went over the feed trough that's this tall and this wide, and being really heavy, she did drag her hind legs a little bit, but that was it. I mean, she can clear it just like an open jumper. But we really, other than that, most of the time, you can see in the background, there's perimeter fence that is 5-wire, high tensile fence, but the rest of our fencing is 3 feet high, 3 strands of, 16 gauge wire on push-in fiberglass posts with, just little teeny wire clips. Now, it needs to be hot. It takes 7,000 to 9,000 volts to hold a goat. But if they're taught when they're little, they won't touch it. It is a sufficient psychological barrier that 3 strands of wire, a hammer handle apart, hammer handle off the ground, hammer handle in between each wire, is enough to keep them in. We do try to keep 2 fence lines between the bucks and the does during rut, but other than that, these guys are pretty reasonable. And it's really pretty exciting to be able to do that. We are a little mean to the kids. Sometimes we'll do the tin foil with some peanut butter on a wire, when they're little, and let them figure out that you don't want to touch that stuff. There's a paddock in my farm where there's something really luscious. There's a pear tree on the other side of the fence, and that's the place where the kids always try to touch it, and that's where they learn. And we just have a really easy time of fencing these guys. You don't want them to learn, because there's always a teacher, and they will teach others to go through the fence. They were eating the neighbor's soybeans when we had one, which came to my house. And then they stopped. They stopped going through the fence as soon as the leader was not there. So they're very, very smart little animals. The bucks, even the bucks are sweet. I mean, they are really nice. I can walk out in the paddock during rut, and they may blubber at me, they may be, but they will not press their heads, and nobody will, I've had one that was a bottle baby that was ugly, and he went to freezer camp. But, other than that, we've had a pretty good set, and they've been bred to be this nice. You know, this is, I say, 10,000 years of selective breeding for fine hair, which of course is where some of the parasite sensitivity came from as well, because you know, when you line breed, well, when you inbreed and it works, you call it line breeding, and when it doesn't work, you call it inbreeding. But the point being that when you breed close on these guys, you get fine hair. You get it in any species. That's why racehorses many times have, you know, really good thoroughbred racehorses, really, really fine silky coats, because that's one of the things that comes along with it. So we really do have in our herd some of the nicest animals and very pleasant. They are good for me, you know. I have a veterinary practice. It's high stress. We live with a lot of life and death stuff every day, and if I can, you know, make sure that I manage well so I don't have a bunch of life and death stuff going on in the herd, they are delightful. They really, really are. So one of the things that we have done, and the fact that it's really hard to raise Angora goats in the jungle on the East Coast because it's so wet, that we have worked really, really hard. Glenn has been very, very carefully, selectively breeding to have really good mohair, but as he says, even more importantly, the resilience and resistance to parasites. A dead goat does not grow hair. I don't care how fine it is. So we have to make sure that this is what we are working for here. This, you haven't seen this in many years, have you? This is 410. This is probably the epitome of Glenn's breeding, which is a doe that raised 2 herd sires, or you know, had twins that were herd sires for us for a very long time. She never needed to be wormed once in her life until she was about 11. She never had a hoof abscess. She never had anything, and she produced kids every year. She had beautiful fine hair, as you can see, if those of you are familiar with that. She was absolutely fine. Now, some of her kids were a little coarse in the neck, but she was fine front to rear, and she sheared kid quality mohair for her whole life, 26 microns. She was a really, really, really fine doe, mean as a snake. Which apparently goes along with parasite resistance. I find that from my Kiko breeder friend, that he says that his crazies are the ones that do the best in his field testing. But anyway, she was absolutely the queen. And let's see if this thing will do what I want it to do here. How do I get that to play that thing? Will it play that? No, come back here. How do I get it to play the video? Do you know how I can get it to play the video? Yeah, I did try to click it, but it went back to that. So I'm going to go back to the slideshow here from the current slide. That is the video. Can I flick it over there? No, that's the video, sorry. So I clicked the wrong one. There we go. Yeah, there's some audio in there. I don't know where it went. There we go. But there she is. She was a wonderful, wonderful goat. Had the most beautiful horns. They were perfect. They were wide enough that if a buck had a set of horns like that, they wouldn't get their feet caught, or they wouldn't get caught fighting with each other. That set of horns, even though, as you can see, she was very old in that video, that set of horns still went through the chutes. So she was just about right. And as you can see, all of her kids had that same look. They were just beautiful, beautiful animals. So we had 410. She was that. Now this is what we are trying to produce. These are the arms of, is that down in Texas or is that Lynn? That's Lynn. Okay. Anyway, but this is what we're trying to produce. We're trying to produce these long, 6-inch long ringlets of really fine, smaller than your little finger. The finer the hair, the tighter the ringlet, with beautiful what we call style, which is the curl in that, and character, which is the wrinkliness like wool has. And it is something that we really work at. And we have every fleece that has not been tested a billion times before, every fleece tested every year to make sure that they're continuing to produce the fine mohair. And we are pretty hard on this that Glenn tends to call, or we separate our mohair at 26 microns. We've got a doe, a grown goat, that is not producing kid mohair. Well, she gets relegated, or her hair gets relegated to, you know, other uses, or gets put into our shipment that goes to commodity sales in San Angelo. But even stuff that we skirted and said we thought was, you know, not so wonderful, they still graded it kid. They still graded it kid. And they gave us a premium price at the mohair sales offices down there. And one of the things when we talk about, well, what are the economics of doing goats? Well, you know, wool. That's why everybody has hair sheep now. Wool sells for, if you're lucky, 50 cents a pound. And you're shearing that thing once a year. If you've got really beautiful wool, you might be able to, you know, get more than that for it, but you're gonna have to find a specialty market for it. Good quality kid mohair is $15 a pound in the grease. And we get anywhere from $9 to $11. We even get, you know, we get paid for our dag. You know, we get paid for poop because the stuff is usable. So anyway, we're really happy to have that. Now, are we gonna do that? Doesn't wanna go? I'll just have to do it this way. I did, I hit that. There we go. So anyway, the fleeces are shorn twice a year. And the man that's doing it there is a wonderful custom shearer. If you ever watch the farm show competitions of sheep to shawl, he's on the winning team every time. His name is Carl Geisinger, and he is a Mennonite minister half the time, and he's a goat shearer and a sheep shearer the other half the time. And he's just wonderful. And we then, of course, turn this into and value add to make yarn, which we sell to the fashion industry in New York, and designers buy it in bulk. But then we also have beautiful accessories, gloves, socks, hats, hand warmers, which some are floating around here somewhere, which I wish to goodness that we had on our website. I wish we had feel-o-vision. We don't have feel-o-vision, so you've got to touch that stuff. There's nothing else that feels like it. It performs so much better. But that's something where, as value adding, we have to educate. We have to educate the people. You know, you know, mohair. What's a mow? It's the hair of a mow? No, it's the hair of an Angora goat. But people don't know that. All they think about is really big, nubby sweaters, or coats that are really itchy, and that's bad quality mohair. The bad rap that mohair has comes from the fact that people weren't paid premiums for good quality mohair, and it was also a critical commodity. Because until DuPont bought a bunch of contracts in the 50s, military uniforms were all made out of mohair. And the reason why that was because, number one, it wore like iron. Number two, it took dye really beautifully. Number three, it could be blocked and shaped, and it would hold its shape. And most importantly, it was fireproof. It doesn't burn. And that even, I mean, that is something, I mean, wool supposedly doesn't, this absolutely does not burn. And so that's something, you know, an awful lot of polyester got stuck to people in the military until we then had to spray everything with, you know, toxic fireproofing, while mohair is naturally fireproof. The other nice thing about mohair is that it does not smell. You can wear the socks for a week and they won't smell. Businessmen can wear their $7,000 mohair and silk suits and sweat all through them, and yet the fabric will not pick up and hold the smell. It wicks the moisture away and then provides evaporative cooling also. So sweaty feet, all you guys who come back from hunting camp and you know, abuse your wives with stinky socks, those will be a whole lot less of a problem. And so also your feet will stay about 40% warmer than wool. And the moisture will be wicked away from a foot and taken to the outside of the sock where it will evaporate. And so that's why I wear my heavyweight socks in the summertime. My feet are cooler. They're much cooler. So this is one of our booths where we sell our items, and we go to high-end craft fairs, and also we're going to probably be doing some shows for buyers as well. But what we do as far as value adding, you can see these, whoops, come back here. You can see that little sign down there, that's Made in America movement. People want to buy American. They want to know their farmer. In the back, there's a big old poster of my friend Theodore, and it says, know your fashion, know your farmer, because people want to know where their stuff comes from. And the other thing that we do is that we are, it's hiding down on this one, I'll go to the next one, but right there, we are animal welfare approved. And that means a lot to people. The consumers really like that. That means they're out on pasture, you know? They have to be out on pasture 24/7 unless they're deathly ill. And so that is, that's an important thing. We have beautiful socks. We have the hats, the scarves, all of these things. You can see headbands over here and hand warmers. And they live, this is something that's important to AWA, they're living on both of our farms. And we have an audit that covers both of our farms. And if you're familiar, they're pretty stringent requirements. And they are living right now with llamas as guardians. This is Scarlet, and she doesn't really do a great job of guarding, but she's big and she keeps the coyotes from going away, from getting in the pastures. But then we used to have guardian dogs, but I couldn't resist not putting that smiling picture and having him look adoringly at his charges. So we had some wonderful guardian dogs, but the llamas are very nice because they eat the same things that the goats do. They are also somewhat sensitive to ionophores. One bite of ionophore killed one of our guardian dogs. It's one of the reasons we made the decision to move to llamas, but we try to protect the llamas from it as well. So we also have peacocks as part of our integrated pest control. And that's a nice cash crop as well. They eat cat food, they eat game bird pellets, and they sell for $200 a piece. So ours are very prolific. Some people have trouble raising them. Ours live in the rafters of the pole barn and nest on the ground, and we have 22 of them right now. I think we've lost a few to some coyotes recently, but we have beautiful. This guy has lavender gene, and he turns purple in the sunlight. He's really, really lovely. But it works very well. We do have, as every hair type animal does, we do have lice. This was the first summer. Anybody else have a big lice problem this past summer? We had lice in the summertime, which is unusual. But we get them under control, but we have no ticks. And that is a big help. These guys do a pretty good job. And they're beautiful, and they come and eat churros out of Glenn's hand at night. So they're very pleasant. So one of the nice things about this and appealing to the public, how many people ask at the booths, do you have to kill them to get their hair? No, we don't. We have goats that are living perfectly lovely lives. They don't mind being shorn. They are always out. Glenn gave a talk about all the different kinds of novel forages that we have on his farm. And we have this wonderful thing that happens. They grow an inch of hair a month. On my farm, because I have very high magnesium soil, which really increases the blood supply to the skin, my goats shear 6+ pounds of hair every 6 months. I had a 25-pound kid, doling, that sheared a 5-pound fleece. So it is, as I say, they are definitely paying for their feed. They have to be managed pretty effectively to make sure they don't get sick, but it is something that can be done. And is there anything cuter than a baby goat? I mean, do you know that kitten videos and baby goats in pajamas are, like, other than porn, are the most, they're the most popular things on the internet? I think so. I mean, I think it's wonderful. And we do have, with some of the ways, depending upon how you manage, most does will have twins the second time around, and on until they get older, they'll tend to twin. So it's very easy to have 115, 120% getting rate. So it's pretty wonderful to have little bitties like that. And they do live a long time. That was Gracie, and Gracie was 14 years old in that picture. She looks pretty good for a 14-year-old goat. And she was very funny. She used to hide behind trees. hide behind trees. And she thought that if she couldn't see you, that you couldn't see her. But if her belly stuck out beside it, it didn't work very well. But she was quite a character. And 410, they both came to my house to live out their old age. And both of them, they weren't sent to slaughter. But 410 would see Gracie tottering up the hill, wait till she got to the top of the hill, go up the hill, knock her down, and roll her down the hill. And then let her get back up, go back up the hill, and do it again. So we did take her away from her, but that was 410. 410 wasn't a nice girl. This is Buddy. Buddy, that tag says 710 on it. That means he was born in 2007. And he's still going strong at my farm now. And he has all of his teeth, all of his bottom teeth. I had his teeth floated a couple of weeks ago because he had a little bit of a excessive transverse ridging and had a block to his chewing, and boy, took that thing off, and he turned around and said thank you, and he's gained 4 pounds in 2 weeks. So anyway, they do sometimes, I do with the old guys, probably spend a little bit too much time and money, but quality of life's really important to me. And I think that's something we're all interested in. And I think these guys can really benefit by it. This is, where did she was an intern that you had from Penn State intern. And as you can see, most anybody that's holding a baby goat's got a smile on their face. Now, this is something that is a really interesting value add for us. We get our pelts and skulls back. And to me, it would be an absolute crime. Everybody saw and felt the pelt. It would be a crime to put that in a trash can, wouldn't it? And that's what happens. And in fact, that's one of the problems with Angora goats. A lot of slaughterhouses don't want to deal with that heavy pelt. And so we definitely found a custom butcher that would do what we need, and we get our skulls and have them processed by the beetle man, the guy with domestic beetles, and he does some of them sealed and some of them not sealed so that people can do other work with them. But these things sell like hotcakes. You've got 3 in the last week. We're shipping them like mad. Personally, I don't decorate with skulls much, but it's something that they are beautiful. They are just a work of art, and so we definitely are happy to oblige. So as I say, the goat's beautiful horns. As when they lose a horn, rip one off, people will purchase those, and their pelts and their meat. How many of you have eaten chevron? How many have eaten goat? Few here and there? Okay. It is different from lamb. It's a bit milder than lamb. It's not, even if you get a really fat doe, it's not quite as heavily fat as lamb. If you've eaten a lot of Indian food, you've eaten goat. And that's what, that is one of the things. There is even a market for our skinny, old Category 2 does, because the ethnic market, now I don't send mine to the New York City slaughterhouses. Mine go to a local butcher, and he uses everything but the bleat. He absolutely doesn't waste a thing. And but again, they are interested in this, this weight of goat. They don't want a big fat goat. All right, about 5 minutes. I'm just about done here. So anyway, this is the other thing. We have our beautiful pelts. One of the coolest things about mohair has an electrical quality that is calming. Mohair has an electrical quality or an energetic quality that improves circulation. All circulation socks and diabetic socks in Europe are made out of mohair. We can't make that claim here because we'd have to have a scientific study to prove it, but it's been known for centuries that this is the way. When people go to Antarctica, they're not wearing some whiz-bang performance fiber, they're wearing mohair, because that's the most critically warm and dry sock that you can wear. So these pelts are gorgeous. And when you put a little baby down, that relaxation thing that goes on, back in the 50s, everybody got their baby, got its picture taken on a mohair pelt. And it wasn't because, for anybody, except that babies lie still and behave themselves on a mohair pelt. So it's a nice thing to have around. Yeah, I behave much better when I'm on a mohair pelt. So anyway, challenges. with Angora goats. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with the fact that they are extremely susceptible to internal and external parasites. They are gentle, they don't move wildly fast, and they don't fight a whole lot, so predators are pretty hard on them. And the weather, they are fine with cold, they're pretty okay with wind, they cannot take rain. And they cannot take rain within 2 to 4 weeks of shearing. They cannot regulate their temperature, and they will freeze to death in even 50, 60-degree weather. They will suffer hypothermia if they get rained on. So they do have to have appropriate shelter. They do need a very high protein diet for production demands. It's at least 20% protein, preferably 23 to 26, because they're growing an inch of hair a month. So that's a real problem. Their feet need frequent care because they grow feet almost as fast as they grow hair. So the ideal is to do their feet once a month. You can probably get away with doing them about every 2 months. Other goats, they're in Texas on hard ground, they just do them when they shear them. But we do ours, I do mine usually about once a month, they rotate through. And again, not all butchers will process them or buy them because there's not a lot of meat on that carcass. There's a lot of skin, it's heavy, there's sometimes a lot of fat, they don't move around a lot, they're not wildly active goats, and so they don't carry a ton of meat. So it's not worth all the trouble dealing with the hair and the pelt, for the meager amount of meat that's gonna be on some of these guys. But the markets that like it really like it. The advantages, absolutely high dollar products. We're negotiating right now for having ponchos and rugs and throws and stuff made. We're talking $400 and $500 and $600 throws. We're talking about yarn that is worth about $70 a pound when it's finished. And so with the inputs that have to go into it, it has to be top combed so that you get all the veg out, make sure all the short fibers are out. And so it can be pretty expensive. Easy kidding. I have had 2 fat does prolapse a little tiny bit of their vagina before they kidded, and that was it. I assist like 1 doe a year out of sometimes 100 that we bred. They don't have the troubles that sheep or cows, or they just plop them right out, and they're great mothers. So again, the kids are shearing the highest quality mohair at 6 months. Super kid mohair, 23 microns or less, and you can get a 25-pound or 40-pound kid. 25 pounds is a light kid. I get 40-pound kids in the fall, and they're shearing 5 pounds of mohair. That's a lot of mohair. So they can thrive on and improve, simple low-cost fencing, housing and handling. We'd already talked about that. They can thrive on and improve marginal land. They will not step in mud if they can avoid it. They will walk across the creek on the rocks if they can. They will not make mud. They are really nice about that. They don't eat grass down to a nub. They stop if they have the choice, they will stop at 10 inches. They are very good for tall grass management. And they have taken land that Glenn had that he always describes it. He talks about it as being, the rabbit dog couldn't get through it. It's so covered in multiflora rows, you couldn't cut it, couldn't spray it, couldn't get it to go away. And in 2 to 3 years, it's this beautiful grass-covered glen. Just gorgeous, They just are wonderful stewards of the land themselves. And then again, no-kill production, except at the end of very, very long lives. And that's a real joy. I cry every time I send one to go to the butcher, but that's something that, something we all have to do. So, what's not to love? They're great. And we adore Angora. So anyway, more goat pictures. Baby goat pictures. What can you do? They're just too cute. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Talk to me about, because of my, cashmere goats that versus the mohair, and because I've been told, my friends that have cashmere goats, it's not worth the time.
No.
For the $5 or whatever you get.
You pick the hair out of the cashmere goat. My sister raises cashmere goats.
So can you just talk how that? Can you explain how that?
These guys
the
are
pound per price and how that is all that.
Cashmere is going to be a good quality cashmere is going to be expensive, but we can't compete with China. cashmere is raised in China, and they make maybe, and they're not nice to their goats, you know, but it's usually combed out. It's not shorn. It's combed out, so it's a lot of trouble. You know, sort of like kivyat, you know, it's pulled out. It's the undercoat that's pulled out. So these guys, the whole reason why this is so wonderful, they have no overcoat. Hair usually grows with a central shaft and then these little tiny hairs around it. Well, in Angora, they bred that out. And that's the reason why you get a little goat. This one's going to have mohair ears. Instead of having straight, short hair on its ears, it's going to have mohair ears because it doesn't have any short, straight hairs. So yes, and in fact, one of the other things is you can, you know, on a llama or an alpaca, you can't use the neck hair. You can only use the saddle. These guys, if they got long enough hair on their legs, it all goes. It all goes in the bag. Even the dag, well, the dags are separate, but even the dags go.
What's a dag?
Dags are the poopy parts of their butt. And the stained mohair is part of the color in that sock. So we use every bit of it. So it's a much more economical thing. Any other questions?
Let's give her a great big hand.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience in getting started. Yes?
You might mention that you have some products.
Yes, yes. I have because we are going to leave here and go directly to a show. I have product with me, and Monty, who just bought a scarf like that, so she's really happy with it. Monty said that we could set up on the table at the end of the hallway there if you all want to come and look and see what we do with this. If you'd like to purchase some, we can do that.
How big does an Angora goat get?
My bucks weigh about 167, 170 pounds. My does weigh between about 80 and 120. And my kids, by the end of the summer, are weighing in at 45 pounds. And they do really well. They eat, in the summertime on my property, they eat about a half a cup of pellet every other day, just enough to get them to line up and look at their butts. And they're eating grass the rest of the time. I mean, I feed enough hard food mainly on my property to get them to come up so we can look at them. Yes?
And then talk to me about lice, where you said that you don't, or they have lice, or you don't worry about it.
Oh, they do get lice, and they're irritating, and they do scratch, and they do get tufts of hair on their horns. So yeah, we do pour-ons for that. The problem with that is that you have to use like 10 times the dose, and it also increases the resistance to that class of drugs. Although ivermectin topically does still work on lice. But then we have absolutely no way to use a dectin as a oral worming preparation. So, yeah. Any others? Okay. Well, thank you so much.